There was a similar one that I was thinking about in that same vein, so I guess bonus one. But in Metal Gear 4, Metal Gear Solid 4, at the end of that game, I guess spoilers for Metal Gear 4 too. We're spoiling all the games today. So, on the last episode, we talked a little bit about how I don't like boss battles. But that was rooted in a question that came on our Discord, which we said we were going to get back to, so here we are. So, time for, after a long hiatus, a Discord discussions, everybody. Datum was asking about what our favorite boss battles were in video gaming. And as you might have guessed, I am not a huge fan of them and didn't have a ton of answers out of the gate. But I did think of a couple, and you said you thought of one.
Out of one for now. I would have to go back through my backlog of games and think of all the boss battles they've had.
Right.
And any that really stick out in my memory as being fun or memorable. And so far, I could think of one that I really, just love.
Boss battles that I remembered fondly is pretty much what it amounts to. There were probably better ones or better executed ones, but there were a couple that really spoke to me, and they're very atypical in terms of how boss battles go. So the first one that I wanted to talk about is actually from God of War 3.
Okay.
And it was the battle with Kronos.
Okay.
If you remember Kronos.
I don't know if I played 3.
Oh, okay. Well,
I played 1 and 2. I might not have done 3.
3 is where things get real. Kronos has to throw down with the big dudes. This is where Poseidon and Zeus and everybody else go down. That's it. So the battle with Kronos though is kind of great because as a Titan, Kronos is huge.
Yeah.
Massive. And so they do this really smart thing of having phases of the battle where Kratos is actively going around Kronos' body and defeating different parts of him. And there's whole arenas where he's fighting different guys on the hand of Kronos until Kronos eventually closes his hand. And then there's more platforming pieces where Kratos is swinging on his chain axes across the buckles on Kronos' arm so that he can get to the next part, up onto the shoulder, until eventually Kronos swallows you until the end part where you get to rip him right open and gut him from the inside out. It kind of made me think of Shadow of the Colossus, but instead of Shadow of the Colossus where the bosses were basically dungeons that moved, this was more of a cinematic experience where you were still actively engaged with other enemies that were being thrown at you while dealing with this much larger threat that you were whipping around and trying to defeat that was just so much larger than you, and it had that grandiose scale that I really appreciated from boss battles that you don't usually see. So large that you can't even imagine how you're going to do it, and then you feel like a real badass. You're going around and swinging around and doing all of these different systems from the game, like the systems for movement and combat and everything like that, and utilizing all of them in order to defeat a literal Titan in the game.
Yeah.
So I liked that more than almost any of the other boss battles in God of War. It's the one I still remember today.
God of War had a bunch of pretty decent battles anyways. Your fight with Perseus, I think, was pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that God of War did right is they actually made the boss battles feel epic, because you were indeed dealing with gods and titans and demigods and heroes and stuff. But I think just because of Kronos' size and stature, it made that stand out to me in terms of just the enormity of the situation and the scope.
So my favorite boss battle, spoilers in case you are in the process of playing or wanting to play Legacy of Kain Defiance. I believe Datum might have gotten it recently, so in case you're listening and haven't played through to this, spoiler alert. So in Legacy of Kain Defiance, you start the game as Kain.
Yes.
And then you go through later and you start playing as Raziel. And the game goes back and forth between you playing as the two protagonists.
Yep.
Kind of back and forth through time until they meet at different points and their stories meet and are converge and whatnot. Have you played this one?
Yeah, it's been a while, but I did play through to the end. I played through to the end. I just don't really remember what.
That's fine. So my favorite part, and I think the best boss battle that I can remember at least, is at one point you are playing as Kain. And you go through and you're back to a point in time where you're in sync with Raziel. And you have this meeting together and you fight. And it's not these big set piece or anything. It's like think in the Avernus Cathedral maybe. And so, you're having this fight with Raziel. And it's all this narrative and you have a little scene, them talking, and you have a fight. And it's not like a huge skill fight. It's you fighting this guy that through the series is built up as not really your enemy, maybe kind of your ally, but tentative allies, and Raziel's very unsure of your intentions. So they build that up really well, and you've never really fought, like, I think once or twice, but, like, you don't kill each other. You fought, and then Kain's escaped. So at this point, they get you as Kain, you're fighting Raziel, and then you get to a point in the boss battle, you've defeated Raziel, and there's a short cutscene of more dialogue, because as the series does, narration very well. And you get through that, and the perspective shifts, and suddenly you start playing as Raziel, right then and there, and it's the other side of this coin.
Yeah.
To use a phrase from Legacy of Kain.
Yes.
And you become Raziel fighting Kain. So you go. It's kind of a two-stage boss battle. But you've got your dual protagonists, and you're playing as one, and then you switch to the other to play it the rest of the way through. And it's really cool narratively because that's just a thing they've done through the series, and then suddenly it's a boss battle. You're fighting your enemy ally, the other protagonist, and swapping it, and then you, at the end of it, Raziel, spoilers still, kills Kain. And I know you don't. I know you know that he doesn't actually kill Kain. He thinks Kain's dead, and Kain is not dead. Right. Rips the heart from his chest to go resurrect Janos Aldrin. And so you're left at that point with a boss battle that you've just beaten, but killed one of your protagonists.
Right.
And so just the way narratively they've done it is really cool. The fact you're playing as two protagonists and they fight and you kill one of them to continue the story as the other one. I don't feel like that happens a lot in games.
Right. And the interesting thing about that, too, is that shift of perspective also has a certain passing of the baton in terms of the way that storyline runs about, the end of essentially a saga that shifts focus from one of the characters to the other and how they implement that. So narratively, it's very satisfying, how they implemented that.
Yeah, it's not about, like, the mechanics of the boss fight or anything for me for that one, or, like, any big grand set pieces. It's all narrative for me. It's just, the way they did that is just great, and it will always stick in my mind as one of my favorite boss fights, and ways to do that type of thing in a game.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. It's actually interesting because there's a theme for my other game that I was thinking about that has a very similar feeling to that. But in order to do this, I'm just going to let everybody know I literally have to spoil Nier Automata.
Oh, yeah.
I have to basically spoil Nier Automata.
I still have not played all the way through the B and the C storylines.
Okay, because I'm going to...
It's fine. I already know the entire story.
Yeah, because what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to tell you about the E storyline.
I don't know which one E is, so it's fine.
The last one. It's the
I
last
haven't played as A2 yet.
Okay.
And I have not beaten as Nines.
Okay. Well, so here's the thing. So just spoiler alert, I guess, for literally the end of Nier Automata, because this is where we're going to get to. You might know Nier Automata is one of the best games. It really is. It's very narratively satisfying. It has a lot of really great philosophical ideas, and it has really excellent storytelling, and the shift of perspective between several characters gives you a much fuller picture than any of the individual characters have. I could talk about the game for a very long time, because it is.
And other people better at their words have done it.
Have already done it over the last few years, so I'm not going to reiterate that now. But anyway, it famously has like 5 actual endings. Well, technically there's 26 for each letter of the alphabet, but a lot of them are fake endings or false ones. There's 5 actual endings that you run through, and they get more and more complex as time goes on. And they also get darker and sadder as time goes on. So when you get to the E storyline, 2B has already died. Basically, 2B's gone. As far as you can tell, the organization that 2B and 9S were working for is gone. Things have gotten destroyed. As far as you know, humanity is indeed dead. There are no aliens left. Like, everybody's gone. Pascal's gone. It's all down. The whole thing's down. And at the end of all of this, you end up in a cathedral. A2 is going to that cathedral, and so is 9S. And at this point, they do not like each other anymore. They're not friends in any way, shape, or form. And they have had quite a journey to get here. And 9S is very bitter about what has happened to his organization, and his brain is a little broken from the experience. And A2 is just the very reluctant hero who, frankly, she just doesn't seem to want to be there at all. But this is the destiny that she's got to go through, and so this is where we're going to end up. At the end of all of these boss battles and set pieces and everything like that, you wind up on this very simple battlefield. It's just basically one plank. It's just a board that you wind up on.
Perfect.
And it's at this point that the game asks you who you are going to play as. And you have played both of these characters at one point or another. You either have to play as A2 or you have to play as 9S. And the reason why they tell you have to do that is because they are going to fight each other to the death now. The fight itself is nothing particularly different. Like, A2 is going to use her big sword and slash away at 9S as much as she possibly can. 9S is going to engage with a lot of his hacking mini games too. So they play in a little bit different ways, but the general thing is that they are going at each other, and this is an inevitable thing. 9S is just absolutely incensed and enraged, and A2 doesn't really want to do this fight, but she is going to have to, because there's no saving him at this point. Like, that seems to be the key. So you do that battle, and one of them, and likely both of them, are going to die at the end of all of this, after they have this narrative, have this conversation while they're fighting. That is, at the end of all of these things, at the end of all of this, it comes down to this last piece of annihilation before the end game. And it's after that you have to make a pretty pivotal choice that I think most people are familiar with the Nier series, which is if you are willing to literally give up your game to give some hope for the future, which is literally just having your save data erased entirely so that you can give hope to the future, and whether you want to do that. But the basic idea is that at the end of this, having played both of those characters and seen everything that they've had to go through, you are now going to have to choose which one you are actually going to fight for and which one you are going to fight against. And it's not going to end well for anybody. No one's getting out of this in good shape. That's the E ending of Nier Automata. It mirrors a little bit of the hopelessness of, like, the first Nier game too, and I haven't played the other one that came out, Replicant, so I don't know. But typically by the time you get to the E storyline of Nier games, it's not pleasant to see what actually happens to everybody.
Isn't 2B's consciousness like in A2 at that point as well?
I don't remember how that shook out. I know that there was a whole thing where 2B was, once they completed their mission, with 9S and 2B completed their mission, there was supposed to be a thing where 2B was specifically going to have to kill 9S herself, because 9S had to die, essentially.
Yeah.
Essentially, that was the whole thing. And of course, now 2B is not around, so 9S is not dead. So A2 is now the one that essentially has to be in that position.
Wasn't 2B specifically designed as a unit to kill the scout unit?
9S.
Because they had some defect with them or something?
Yeah.
They were too emotional, I think.
Which you get by the end of it.
Yeah.
It becomes pretty obvious. But A2 was, I want to say A2 was an earlier model, if I remember correctly. Man, the story is starting to slip away from me about the particulars.
Time to play it again.
Yeah, I guess I gotta go play it again, guys. I'll go play it again to remember how these story beats work, but A2 was like one of the original models, didn't necessarily have that programming. It's a sad ending to a very good game, but it's incredibly well done, and I think the reason why is because they make it very simple at the end of just being on this singular plane, almost like a 2D experience of having the two characters fight and use their abilities against each other. Realizing that, you're going to have to use your two playable characters that are still around at that point against
similar to the last one I talked about, where you have two characters by the time you're probably playing Defiance, you're very familiar with these two characters and how their story beats and personalities are. Especially after playing through to the point in Defiance where you've played both these characters for a number of hours.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know? So you're very familiar with each of them and what their potentially what their goals are, what they're seeking.
Right. Right.
So it's the same type of beat there where it's the one of you is gonna die.
Yeah. There was a similar one that I was thinking about in that same vein. So I guess bonus one. But in Metal Gear 4, Metal Gear Solid 4, at the end of that game, I guess spoilers for Metal Gear 4 too. We're spoiling all the games today. But in Metal Gear Solid 4, there's like an actual, more like a Rock'em Sock'em Robots sort of thing, like an actual boxing match, like a fisticuffs match between Snake and Ocelot. Yeah. But the way that they do that is they set it up in different stages, and you see that the names of them change to how they were presented in all of the different phases of the series. So it's not just like Solid Snake, but it's like Big Boss and all of the different variants that have come along, and Ocelot in the different variants right up until you get to like Old Snake. And so it's like you're taking these two characters you've been familiar with throughout the entire series, and you are now going to fight as them through the entire series to wrap up a storyline. It's been done in some ways throughout the course of time, but I think when I look back on it, it's just that it's that A2-9S fight that's so reminiscent, because I didn't really want to do the part where I erased my save game, because I wanted to be able to eventually go back and play that part again at the very end, to experience that again, because it's a very powerful moment, especially considering everything that came before. But I guess that's what we would consider our favorite boss battles, Datum. They're probably not the kind of boss battles most people...
I mean, Nier Automata, maybe.
Maybe, Chronos is like a boss battle. That's a boss battle. You know what? I'm going to pass the question along to anybody who happens to be listening in our Discord or at this video, and ask you, do you have a favorite boss battle, and why? What made it so cool and great? Was it that you could actually do it? That's usually a good boss battle to me.